Alright, this is going to be the last video that we're going to do for 8.1. This is really the first part where we actually use the math. The previous videos you just went over definitions. This also should be a review. We're going to add and subtract polynomials. The objective, okay, make sure you take this down, we're going to combine like terms. Now we've worked with this before earlier in the year. Like terms, what I mean by that, well, they have to look similar, especially if you have variables. Here's an example. Let's say I gave you 4x. Well, another like term with that would be, let's say, 6x. Okay, now there's no exponent written for x, but it's assumed to be to the first. So let's say I give you another example. Let's say I had 4x squared. Well, the only term that would be like or similar to that, it would have to have an x squared in it. So it would have to be 6. Like if I just had it written like that, 6x, these are not like terms. But if I put a squared above the x, then they are like terms. And then you just add them together or subtract them together. Alright, so number one, we first see if I add these like terms. Now see how they're both in parentheses? You really can kind of get rid of the parentheses because it's like you're distributing 1 to this. Well, it still stays as 9x plus 3. If you distribute 1 to that, well, 1 times 4x minus 2 is still positive 4x minus 2. Then we just combine like terms. So I have, what, 9x and 4x, and there's a positive before it. They're both positives. So you add the 9 and the 4, you get 13, and then you just drop down the x. So you cancel, you get rid of those. Then you have positive 3, but then you have minus 2. So 3 minus 2 is positive 1, so we say plus 1. And I know that I'm done because 13x and 1, they're not like terms. I can't add those together and get 14x. So that's it. That's our answer. Okay, let's skip to number 3. Again, same thing, number 3. It's like distributing 1. We have 2 trinomials. It's like distributing positive 1 to each of these trinomials. So it's just going to be 2x squared plus 5x minus 7. And 1 times that second trinomial gives us the same thing, plus 3 minus 4x squared plus 6x. Now I just want to identify the like terms. Let's underline the 2x squared. So I want to look at the other x squared, which is this. Now it's negative 4x squared. So 2 minus 4 gives me negative 2. So I get rid of this, get rid of that. Okay, let's look at the next one. I'm going to underline positive 5x. Then I underline positive 6x. And if I add positive 5x and positive 6x, that gives me 11x. So I'm done with the x's. Then you can see I just have constants. I can just add these together. Don't forget the negative before the 7. Negative 7 plus 3 gives me negative 4, so it changes to minus 4. Okay, and then usually we like, actually you can see the negative 2. I forgot putting the x squared in front of the negative 2. So there it is. Forgot to put that x squared in there. These are not like terms. You can't combine x squared with an x with a constant, so that's it. You're done. Okay, let's move on to subtracting. Subtracting, there is a little difference. Take this down. With subtracting, before you subtract and before you combine the like terms, what you need to do first is distribute the negative. Or we'll say distribute negative 1. Remember 1 and 3 that I just did, I distributed positive 1 to everything, and that didn't change anything because 1 times anything gives you the same thing. But now it's different if I have a negative. So here, the first stays the same. This is like distributing positive 1 to the 4x squared plus 3. So that stays 4x squared plus 3. But I'm going to put a little negative, or I'm going to put a 1 here. I'm going to distribute negative 1 to this. So negative 1 times 4x squared is negative 4x squared. And then negative 1 times this positive 2 is minus 2. So that's a little bit different. Then after you distribute the negative 1, you do everything else the same. So let's see here, 4x squared minus 4x squared, that gives you 0x squared, which cancels out. And then 3 minus this 2 gives me 1, positive 1, so that's it. That's my answer. Okay, let's skip to number 8. Let's do one more. The first trinomial, I leave the same, 3 minus 2x plus 2x squared. Then I put a 1 here, I distribute negative 1. Negative 1 times 4x is negative 4x. Negative 1 times negative 5 is plus 5. And negative 1 times positive 3x squared is minus 3x squared. Okay, let's combine all the x squareds first. I want to start with the highest exponents. Let's see here, 2x squared minus 3x squared. 2 minus 3 is negative 1, so that's just negative x squared. I'm done with the x squareds. Let's look at the x's. I have negative 2x. I have negative 4x. Negative 2x minus 4x is negative 6x. So I'm done with that. Then I have positive 3 and positive 5. I add those together. 3 plus 5 is 8. And the x squared, the x, and the constant of 8, they are unlike terms, so I know that I'm finished. So the whole goal and the whole objective for this was really to combine your like terms. Just make sure when you're subtracting, make sure you do this first, distribute the negative one, then you combine the like terms.